Hi guys, okay, so these are some percent word problems that I'll put this online because today we were kind of in a hurry. We went through our quiz, so just some types of word problems that may help you out. So the first type is a ratio conversion. So when you see 6 out of 20, okay, right away we convert that to a fraction. Is equals equal, is means equals, and when it says what percent, you can do this two ways. You can say n%, or you can set that when it says what percent, n over 100. Sometimes we say p over 100, percent over 100. So whatever you want to do. If I've got, I'm going to show you both ways. So if I set it up as 6 over 20, I can divide right away 6 by 20. The top dog always goes into the doghouse to convert this to a decimal. It goes 0 times. We always want to start with a leading 0. And then 20 goes into 60 3 times. And so now we have 60, and there's no remainder. And so we can say that this is equal to 3/10 equals n%. Now to convert a decimal to a percent, we have to multiply it by 100, move it to the right 2 times, once, twice. In that extra space, I'm going to add a 0, and then I add my percent sign. To lose the percent here, I have to gain it here, equals to n. Okay, so that's method number 1. Method number 2, I can use the part to whole, part to whole. Part to whole, part to whole. So, in other words, this would be the is over of equals percent over 100. So, first we say to ourselves, okay, first we're going to say to ourselves, what percent is going to, for the percent, we're going to use a variable n. 100 out of 20. This is not really going to work this way. I would just make your original, forget the part to whole. Let's disregard that. Okay. The other thing that you can do is make our first ratio 6 out of 20. We know that isn't equals what percent? I just say p over 100. And the number that we get here for the p is what the percent will be. So now I can use my cross products. 20p over on this side, and this becomes 6 times 100. Okay, I can multiply that out. 600 equals 20p. Divide both sides by 20. Okay, p is equal to, right away, notice I can divide top and bottom by 10 and I'll be left with 60 over 2. 2 goes into 60 30 times. Now it did ask for what percent, so I must add the percent sign. Is that clear? I must add. 6 out of 20 is what percent? The is over of method didn't really work there, so I don't want to. Do you have any questions? No. Okay, we're going to move on. Next type of problem we had was, I like to build the equations because I'm teaching you guys really how to read a word problem and start. What would I put for what percent? N%. Of means 3 5/10 0 and 84 hundredths. And then we want to get the n% alone. Divide by 3 5/10. Divide by 3 5/10. I'm left with n% equals 84 hundredths divided by 3 5/10. So if I'm doing this, the one thing I want you to remember when you're doing your division, the top, the numerator, always goes in the division box, or the top dog goes into the dog house. I've got 3 5/10. So I can't divide by a decimal, so I've got to multiply it by 10, move it over, multiply by 10, move it over. And now I've got 35, does not go into 0, it does not go into 8, but it goes into 84 2 times. That's 7. I have a remainder of 14. Bring down the next 0, and it goes 4 times. So then I have 0 and 24/100ths. To convert that to a true percent, I now have to multiply it by 100. Move it over twice. And so then I say n equals, once I turn this into a percent, I lose it on the other side. Okay, questions?
No.
Okay. I could have used the is over of equals percent over 100 here.
Does that not always work?
Well, I know. That's why I didn't like that on that last one. It didn't really work. But look here. They gave us the ratio. That would have to be my of. Okay? So I know is ambiguous. It's between two numbers, but of has to go with 3 5/10, right? The is right here. So 0.84 equals, we don't know what percent, it's P over 100. And now I can do my cross products. 3 5/10 P, 100 times 84/100ths equals 84. Right? Divide by 3 5/10. 3 5/10. Top dog goes in the dog house. Remember, I've got to move it over once. I've got to move the decimal over once. And so 35, it goes 2 times. 70, I have a remainder of 14, and it goes 4 times. And there, 24 is equal to the percent. Remember, in your answer, you must write 24%, or I will knock you off. Okay, questions?
No.
Okay. Let's move on to the next type. Okay, percent of a number. Again, we're just transforming it. I can't do any math with a percent, so I've got to convert that to a number we can use. What kind of number would that be, 112%?
At 1 and 1200.
1 and 1200ths. We're going to convert that to a decimal. That's right. 1 and 1200ths. What does of mean in math?
Oh, times.
Times. Bring down the 650 is
Equals
what number?
and
So we're just doing straight multiplication. Now, would my answer have a percent sign?
no.
Because it doesn't say what percent. It only says what number. I want to know what number is 112%. They're giving us the percent. And so, yeah, go on.
Can you just multiply 112 times 1650 and then move the decimal? And then?
You won't even need, well, yeah, you're going to place your decimal because, oh, okay, I see. You're just doing 112. I just want to make sure you remember to do it. Usually we put it into true decimal form, and then that accounts for it. Okay, why don't you pause the recording and try the next one on your own. Go. What do I put for 7%?
7,000.
Not thousands. Decimal is naturally to the right. Move it how many times? Two times. Once, twice.
Hundreds.
Right. So it'd be 0 and 7/100ths. Of means what?
Times.
What number? What am I placing for that?
And
Is
equals
31 5/10. Now, to get the n alone, what do I have to do? good. And n equals, you could clear the decimal here. You could get rid of all decimals. I've got to move the decimal twice here. I've got to move the decimal once here. By rights, I could just, not even setting it up yet. If I want to move it, I go to the greatest amount, 2 decimals. I could multiply the top and bottom by 100, right? And now that's going to go, that becomes, isn't 100 over 100 equal to 1?
Yes. Anything
Anything times 1 is still the same value. So now this is going to become 7, and this I've got to move it 2 times. 2 times. This is going to become 50. So if you don't like to do division with decimals, you could get rid of the decimal first. And then you're doing the top dog goes in the dog house. And it goes 6, 7, 49, 1. It goes 1. It goes 3. Did I do something wrong? Oh. What did I do? I don't know what I did here. This should have been 300 and, sorry about that. It's 3 o'clock and I'm eating lunch. It should be 3150, right? Once, twice. I was just looking at, I don't know what I was doing. I didn't look at the rest of it. So it's really 7 into 3150. So 7 goes into 31 4 times. 28. I have a remainder of 3. Bring down the 5. Oh, that's pretty. 35, and it goes 0. And so we get n equals 450. So if you don't like to, the other thing would have been 0.07 into 31.5. If I move it over once, twice, and then I move it over once, twice, I would just add that, bring my decimal here, decimals here. But again, we cleared the decimal here and here, so we didn't have to divide with decimals. All right, so now let's go on to the next one. Let's check our work. Yeah. Percent of change. We always use a formula. And the formula, don't be afraid of this triangle. This means the change. Okay? So this means the change, the percent change is equal to the change over the original amount. So what do we mean by the change? We mean the difference between the two numbers over the original amount. Okay, so to find the difference, I'm really going to say 83 minus 75. I always take my bigger number first. And what is the first number listed? 75. Okay, so 83 over 75 is 8 over 75. And now we do the division. 75 over, top dog goes in the doghouse, right? So it goes 0, it goes once. I have a remainder of 5. It goes 0. Let's bring down another 0. And now it goes, I think, 6 times. So I have 30, carry the 3, 42, 43, 44, 45. Oh dear. And we see we have a repeating decimal, so this equals 0.106 repeated. What percent does that become?
That becomes 1 and...
No. To go from decimal to percent, you have to move it 2 times. To the right.
10 and 6 tenths.
10, 6 ninths. Right? If it's repeating, percent, which is also reduced, is 10 and 2/3%. Okay? Okay, hold on one second. So, I want to show you I want to say, what would happen? Let's take some easier numbers. And I want you to try this time. I'm going to do percent of change. I'm going to set you up to do 2 problems. And I want you to do, remember the percent of change is equal to the difference over the original amount. I want you to do 2 problems. What happens when we go from $20 to $30? I buy something at $20, I mark it up, and I sell it for $30. Then I want you to try the same thing, only I buy it at $30 and I discount it down to $20. Try those 2. And those are easy, so pause the recording and try those. All right, so now, what'd you do on the first one? How did you get it?
I subtracted 30 minus 20
Over,
over 20, which is the original amount.
which would be,
10 over 20.
which is what,
Simplified to 1/2.
which is what decimal?
50%. Oh,
Good, okay, which would be 0.5,
yeah. And then
which equals 50%. And then when we did the other one, you did,
I did 30 minus 20 over 30. And then 10 over 30 equals 1/3. And then into the decimal is 3 point.
or, okay,
Yeah, 33 and 3/10. And then with that, what is that called?
1/3%, because it's repeating. I don't know how to say the repeating.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I know there's
Okay,
a word for it.
now, is this a 33 1/3%? Is that an increase or a decrease?
Decrease.
Right, so it's a 33 1/3% of change decrease. And the other one is a 50%
Increase.
correct. You understand the idea? Okay, tax. This is interesting how they're doing it. So I guess percent of change, they're putting in the tax over the original amount, and that gives us our percent. I'd never done it that way. When I divide it out, I get this, and so it's really 8 1/4%. Okay? I would have done this. I just always do. Tax is percent of a number. Right? Tax is percent of a number. Always. I pay sales tax on my candy bar. Sales tax of the 50 cents for the candy bar. Sales tax of the sweater. So tax was 3 63/100 is my equal percent times, do we know what number? Do we know the percent?
Oh, yeah.
Did they give us a percent here?
No.
No, so we don't know it. So we're going to say n% of means times, and the number is 44. And then I solve it. And I go right to where the other one built it. I actually kind of think I like that. So now I have, I'm right back where we started. You know, when you divide it out, if we were to do the division, we would get 825 equals n%. I move it, when I'm going from decimal to percent, I go 2 places to the right, once, twice, so it's 8 1/4% equals n. If I go percent, let's say I start here, it's like the alphabet. P comes second. If I go from percent to decimal, I move it this way. If I go from decimal to percent, I go this way. Correct? Okay, I think we have one more problem. I liked how they did that. That was interesting. Okay, discount and markup. Okay, discount is money off the original price that we take off. So there's the discount, there's the original price, and there's the sale price. If I get a discount, it costs $50. There's a $10 discount. It ends up, sale price is $40. Markup is I buy it cheap and then I sell it for a higher price to make a profit. Every time we're doing discount and markup, we're doing percent of a number. So if we have a 20% discount, what percent are we actually paying?
Oh, 80%.
80%. So I personally like to do 80% of $85 is what it will cost. If I do the 20% discount, I have to figure out 20% of 85, and I really have to subtract that from the original amount, $85. So it's 2 steps. But if instead of calculating this discount here, instead of calculating the discount here and then subtracting, I can right away find 80%. If my discount is 20%, I pay 80%. So I always say to myself, what percent am I paying? How do we figure out the percent we pay? Subtract the discount percent from 100%. So 80% at 85 is $68. And so it works out the same way. I personally feel that this way is easier to think about, because I would really just go right to here. Yes. And the same thing with markup. So with markup, if I'm marking it up at 30%, what percent am I really going to charge?
70.
No, this is different. I charge the original 100% that I paid plus 30%. So this becomes 130, right? Because we want to get back 100% of the amount that I paid for it downtown was $33.80. I want to get that back plus an additional. Isn't this 100% of what I paid?
Yeah.
So I want to get that back plus an additional 30%.
Markup is increasing.
Right. So it's 130%. Okay, so after a 30% markup, the shirt was. So markup, I would almost make a original price plus markup up is $33.80, right? See how I kind of turn that? So I'm going to say is $33.80. Let's see how they set this up. Let me see how they tell you to. Oh. So okay, what I missed was, it's really like the original price plus the markup is $33.80. Okay? Now, we don't know what our original price is. Let's call the original price X, right? And then the markup, what am I doing to figure out the markup of 30%? I'm going to go 3/10 times X times the original price. I'm going to add those two together, and all together we're going to get 80, not 86. So really, what does this become? Isn't this one whole?
Yeah.
And this is 3/10. So can't we say this is 1 3/10 X equals 33.80? So I'm dividing by 1 3/10. Divide by 1 3/10. And 1 3/10. And I'm looking for. Okay, so 33.80 divided by 1 3/10 is 26. X is equal to 26. So now it makes sense of the answer.
Okay.
what does that mean, 26?
So the original price is $26.
Perfect. The original price is $26. Okay, questions? All right, so I think that's it. We could go back to the original problem if I went to the beginning of the slides, which I did kind of skip the basics. Just reminding you, assuming that we understand decimal to percent. So if I'm converting a decimal and going to percent, I really am multiplying by 100 and I move my decimal 2 places to the right. The thing about decimals, if you can say them properly, then you can convert them. So the way we say the decimal is 63 hundredths, so we can convert it to the fraction. And when you do that, the top part is the percent. Again, one way to look at it is I move it 2 times to the right, or 63 hundredths, and just whatever that is becomes the percent. So I kind of skipped all this. When we are going percent to decimal, we go from, I don't like to show it that way. Think about the alphabet. In the alphabet, we have D to P. So when I'm going from percent to decimal, I go to the left, right? So I'm getting my decimal naturally is here, and I move over once, twice. Or I can say it's 29 over 100, and that would be 29 hundredths. Okay? If I have 7 hundredths, what would that be as a fraction?
7 over 100.
And what percent? 7%. Right. And what happens if I have a mixed? Okay. What would the decimal be?
2 times to the left.
And it would be?
18,000.
Yep. Or 18 over 1,000. Perfect. So, again, think of the alphabet, D to P. So when I'm going from decimal to percent, I go that way. When I go from percent to decimal, I move the decimal that way. Quick little reminder. So Miss Sophia taught you a little bit. If we know 1/8, if we know 1/4, if we know 1/5, then we can figure out 2/5, 3/5. If you don't, remember we always divide. Top dog goes into the dog house. But remember, I can 1/8 is 125 thousandths. Multiply that by 7, and we get 87 and a half. 875 thousandths. I'm pretty good with my dividing, so I just generally do that. And then if I can say it, it's 875 thousandths. So it would go, actually we're going to the percent. So I move it 2 times to the right, and it's 87.5%.
Does it matter whether you write it in a decimal or fraction?
No. But do know this is not a true decimal. So if you have this and we have to convert to a decimal, this is not a true decimal. It's in percent form. To lose that percent sign, we've got to move, we're actually dividing by 100, right? We're dividing, moving it 2 times to the left. When I go to the left, I'm dividing by 100. When I move to the right, I'm multiplying by 100. Okay, that's really what's happening. We might say move it to the left, move it to the right. We're either dividing by a power of 10 or multiplying by a power of 10.
So if you were to write 87.5 of a percent, you can't just take out the percent sign
And think you're,
as a decimal.
exactly. Okay, so we have 61 hundredths. And then if we can move the decimal over 2 times, if we can say it, then we can write the fraction. Some ones to look at. If 1/5 is 20%, what is 4/5? Yeah, right. So if 1/5 is 2/10, this would be what? 0 and
1/5 is 2/10, so that would be 8/10.
good. And the percent would be 80%. Okay, my decimal, what would this decimal be for 16%?
1600.
Good. 0 and 1600ths. And that would be 16 over 100, and then we reduce. Very important. 2 goes into that 8 times, 50 times, it's still 2 evens. It goes 4, it goes 25, and so we would go with the 4 over 25.
And would you get it marked off if you didn't reduce?
Yeah, if you did not reduce, we will always mark off. The next one we could do, our fraction would be 9 over 1,000, or 9%. No. It actually would not be
Or 9/10
of a percent. 0 and 9/10 of a percent.
Okay.
What would the next one be?
It would be 3/10.
Good. 0 and 3/10, and the
And then
percent?
3%.
What?
No, 30%.
30%. Once, twice, add the 0. Okay, now what decimal is this?
Wait, where?
270%.
Oh. 2 and 70, or 2 and 7 times.
Good. And then what would that fraction be?
2 and then 7 over 10.
Good. Okay. All right, let's see. So I kind of skipped all this thinking this was review for you guys. So if I have, let's say I'm dividing, right? It's something I don't know. So I'm going to do the dividing and I start to get a repeated number. I go till, I need to have, we know that if this is a repeat, any repeated decimal goes over what number? A repeat, right. All repeats are actually over 9. So if I have 0.6 repeated, this really is 6 over 9. When we reduce, it becomes 2/3. So we know that if this is a repeat, what would the next digit be? 6. So if I'm converting to a percent, I move it once, twice, then I get 16.6 repeated percent. But we don't usually use that repeat sign. We convert that to the decimal. And the reduced decimal, we would say 6 over 9%. It's 16 and 2/3%. So that's how we write it. And we don't generally round up, especially in banking and big money. We don't round up, okay? Because that 2/3% is a lot of money on a $200,000 loan. My loan went from 3 3/4% to 3.25%, and that saved me about, I don't know, about $1,000 a month. So that is big money, and we don't want to just round down. Now, how would I convert that to the decimal? First, 77. Convert this to a decimal.
Or would you change it to an improper fraction?
Yeah, don't even worry. But what do I do to the 77/9? What is that?
Oh, a repeating decimal.
Right, so what would it be? 0.7 repeated.
Yeah.
Now what do you do to become a decimal, a true decimal? Move it.
Move it to the left.
How many times? Okay, that's where my decimal goes. So this is, we don't need to write more than one repeat. Okay? And then the fraction would be,
7/10.
no, 7 over,
9.
because all decimals are over, repeating decimals are over 9. Okay? So these are more repeats. Once you pause the recording. So what would the decimal be?
8 and 9 times repeating.
No, we would just say 0.8 repeated. We know that to convert it to the percent, we're going to move it once, twice. I know I'm going to have to, so I have an 8, moving it once and moving it twice. And then to show that it's repeating and not exactly 88%, I would put another 8 here. So it would be 88 and 8/9%. Okay.
And then for the last one, 5.
What about 66 and 2/3?
Oh,
That's 66
6 times repeating.
6/9 repeated, and then it becomes what decimal?
Oh, that's the decimal, not
6/9 repeated,
Oh, okay. And then 6/9.
which reduces to?
Oh, 2/3.
Now that one you should have memorized. You should know that 0.6 repeated is 2/3. Next one. I happen to know this because I give quizzes out of 6. And so I have this one memorized. But this one, just take your top dog and it goes in the doghouse. Okay? I think it's the easiest way. So 6 goes into 58. So I do 48. I have a remainder of 2, bring down a 0. It goes 3 times. Remainder of 2, bring down a 0. It goes 3 times, so what do we know? 0. Point.
8, and then the 3's repeating.
3, and I'm just, we're going to just put a repeat bar over the first 3. And now the percent would be, what do I do?
Move it to the right 3 times.
Okay, and what would be next to it? Because it's a repeat, what would be the next digit?
3.
With a repeat, right? It would keep going. So it's 83.3 repeated percent. Now, how do I write that 0.3 repeated?
1/3.
Yep. 83 1/3%. Okay. See, I think we're caught up to the actual word problems. Oh, no. We've got some mixed numbers. So do you know what 3/5 is?
It's, well, 1/5
Is 2/10.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then, so 2, yeah.
So what would 3/5 be?
3 times?
No, if
Oh,
2/10,
6 times.
6/10. So this would be 4, and this part right here converts to 0.6, just that portion. So what percent would that be?
Like 2 times.
And it would become?
460%.
Good. So do you understand how we're doing that? You can pause it and try these problems. All right, so let's check some answers. We did this one already. What did you get for 55 5/9? What would the decimal be?
55.5 repeating?
Nope.
Oh.
You forgot to move it.
Move it. It would be 0.5 repeating.
That's it. That's it. And what fraction would that be?
5/9.
Perfect. Okay. And the next one, 7 1/8 would be what decimal?
7 and 125.
Hundredths. Yep.
And then
Thousandths, sorry.
Anastasia Rosakova, can you come to the main office?
712 and
Anastasia
1/2%.
Rosakova, right? Can you come to the main office?
712. Don't say 712 because and implies decimal. So you would say 712%, 712 and a half, and is our decimal, and a 0.5%. 712 and a half. Good. Now, 3.3 repeated decimal. What fraction is that?
Fraction of 33 and 1/3.
That's not a fraction. What fraction?
Oh,
All repeats are over,
no, 3/9.
which reduces to?
1/3.
Right. We want to hear the 1/3. And that's one you should definitely have memorized. And then what percent would it be?
I got 33 and 1/3.
Perfect. That's it. And I think that's like the last, we're all caught up. So this part was really the pre-algebra. The word problems are the ones that we had really focused on today. Okay?
Yeah, I got the word.
That's the end of the lesson.